Good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. This is Ty Metalhood Weatherman. Hopefully, you guys have had a good Tuesday. Well, we draw near to what looks to be at this point an inevitable landfall with Hurricane Ian. We're sitting at a major hurricane still right now. And the forecast has changed a bit more, not just with the track, but with the intensity as well. We are sitting at 120 miles an hour with this hurricane right now. It is expected to be strong all the way up to landfall, maintain its strength as a Category 4, unfortunately, as it works its way into the west coast of Florida here. We'll mainly start with the path changes here, and then we'll talk about the hazards real quick. Well, so we have a Category 4 storm at landfall with 130-mile-per-hour winds from the looks of it. Originally, this was a lot closer to Tampa. At one point, this was hanging towards the Big Bend. Now we are moderately south of Tampa, I would say. So this may very well spare them some of the worst storm surge impacts. Because a nightmare scenario would be is if a major hurricane such as this were to go to the south, to the north side of Tampa, to where it would be on the southeastern quadrant of this storm. What would happen in that scenario is those winds would push water into the Bay Area, and with that area being so shallow, the only place that water would go is inland, and a lot of Tampa would be inundated. But it looks like that scenario may be very well avoided. Given how well populated that area is, that would be a nightmare scenario. Not to say that what we have going on isn't bad enough as it is, but if there's any sort of light we can get out of this, I think that might just be it here. We can also tell that the storm is taking a pretty good jog to the east now. And now the eye is looking like it's going to be hanging around areas like Orlando and potentially could be making a secondary landfall. We have to kind of watch areas like Savannah and Tybee Island towards Georgia for a potential landfall as a tropical storm, albeit a weak one, but it will still have plenty of dangerous impacts with it. As you can see, as indicated by these red circles here, these are tornadoes. So, in case you didn't know, tropical cyclones, when they make landfall, can produce tornadoes, especially on this right front quadrant that I always talk about whenever it comes to hurricanes. And I do think that this tornado threat has the potential to be a big deal as the storm moves further to the north and interacts with this trough that's going to be hanging around the Appalachians and parts of the southeast. So the next few days are going to be very tense, even for areas that aren't dealing with direct landfall impacts like storm surge and coastal flooding, so to speak, and 100+ mile per hour winds. The fact that as of right now we even have tornado warnings in effect. We have one, and this is for west central Collier County in Florida. It's a radar indicated tornado. And the thing about this, and this is what makes these types of tornadoes difficult to track, more often than not, they're going to be rain wrapped, A. And then B, got some new activity here. It's a flash flood warning, I think. But one thing about these tropical tornadoes is the speed that they move at. It varies. You could have one cell that produces a tornado moving at 20 miles an hour, and then you have another one that's moving about 60 or 70 miles an hour. So if you have the idea of trying to chase these storms here, these tropical supercells, best advice is, unless you're a pro, don't. Shoot, I know a decent amount about weather, and I wouldn't even do it. I wouldn't even go as far as to say I know a lot. But anyway, so as of right now, the areas that I'm calling out, saying not necessarily prepared, because it's already too late. Time's pretty much up, but prepare for some additional impacts. Might be Orlando, Jacksonville, Savannah, Georgia, even towards Augusta here. We're looking at you guys for a potential heavy rainfall threat. And then, oops, I didn't mean to zoom in. And maybe even areas like Charleston, Columbia, Charlotte, you guys too. But I also want to reiterate this because I've said it in every video, and I will keep saying it until it gets hammered all the way till the cows come home. This cone is only for the center of circulation. These impacts will span much further out than this. So just because you're not inside this cone, like for example Atlanta, you're kind of teetering on the edge on the western edge of it as this thing trends further to the east. Don't think that you're excluded from having any impacts. And then on top of that, this is called the cone of uncertainty for a reason. And it gets wider the further out we go because we still don't know where this thing is going to go. New tornado warning got issued. Actually, that might be the same one. But it's for the same county, Collier. It's radar indicated. Expired. It's a brand new one. They reissued it. The looks of it. Yep. But yeah, that just tells you what we have going on here and the multitude of threats here. I think this is actually our tornado warning right there. Go ahead and take a quick look at that. Yep, that's it right there. And this is a little bit closer to the center. The center's still pretty far off. I'd say about maybe 100 miles or less from Cape Coral. So that's why they issued it, so they could allow that other tornado warning to expire. Keep an eye on this because this may spin up quick over towards Cape Coral as well. So, and also that's where we could be having our potential landfall at as well. Maybe just a little bit north of you guys, possibly. Actually, I think you guys might be right in line based off the way this has been trending. But anyway, we'll quickly go ahead and look over some of these parameters here. We'll look at the current arrival time of tropical storm force winds. So keep in mind that this is a pretty wide swath here. And this is actually a little bit more like what we could actually deal with versus the cone, which only indicates the center. Tropical storm force winds extend probably a good 110 miles out or more at this point. It's just a rough estimate because I haven't even had a chance to look at the latest synopsis here. But over towards southern Florida, we're already experiencing tropical storm force winds. By tomorrow morning, central Florida, we're going to be dealing with those tropical storm force winds as well as the Big Bend. We're working our way into the Panhandle. By Wednesday afternoon, this is going to start working its way into far southern Georgia, and then these tropical storm force winds will start to extend further and further to the north. By Thursday, that's when central through pretty much maybe even northern Georgia could potentially start to experience these winds. And maybe by Friday, the Carolinas will be in play with this. North Carolina will even be in play with this. So that's what we have going on with the winds here. We'll look at the potential rainfall rates. So this is the newest advisory here. So while Tampa Bay may not get the nightmare storm surge scenario, and I say might because we still have no full idea of where this is going to go, we are still going to get a boatload of rainfall over here, maybe 15 to 20 inches possible within central Florida, in the swath between Tampa Bay and Orlando. Plenty of areas in between could still see about 10 inches, about 6 to 10 inches easily. More than enough to cause some flash flooding issues. So, just because you may not get storm surge does not mean you are immune to flooding. So please stay alert in these areas, especially if you see your area in the pink here. The further back west we go, the rain threat kind of tapers off here, about 1, 2, maybe 4 inches expected in some areas. Savannah, I'm going to be watching you a little bit more close, as well as Augusta, because depending on how this track goes and depending on how it continues to interact with the trough, it could very well stall out still. But I think we're starting to potentially trend away from it, which is a good sign. Because as bad as this could be, it could be a whole lot worse if it would have got left behind by this trough and it would have stalled out. I also do think the track would have changed and may have created a more dangerous situation for areas like Tampa. And maybe even towards the Big Bend and the Panhandle. So we'll go ahead and take one more look at the storm surge here. And we'll go ahead and look at the tornado potential as well to go with it. See how far out they'll be going over the next few days. So just about the entire western coast of Florida is under storm surge warnings. I mean, it's pretty much right up here on top of you at this point. So the seas are definitely getting kicked up. Water's being pushed in for a lot of areas. So that makes sense. Then over towards Jacksonville, they now have storm surge warnings in effect. And now we have a little line of storm surge watches extending into the Atlantic coast of Georgia. Includes everybody, including Savannah. And then we have it extending pretty far up Charleston, South Carolina. We have Charleston included in this as well, so you guys watch out. Storm surge may become a big problem for you guys as we start to look towards maybe Wednesday night, Thursday. We'll go ahead and look at the peak surge too real quick before we look at our tornado threat. So no surprises here. Towards Tampa Bay, our storm surge threat has diminished a bit. Instead of looking at up to 12 feet, now we're looking at 4 to 6 feet. Much better number than what we saw, but it's still not great. Not the greatest of news. You're still very much susceptible to extreme damage just with this storm surge. Now over towards Charlotte Harbor and Bonita Beach, we're looking at 8 to 12 feet. This is where our peak surge is going to be. This is where most of the damage I think will be occurring, unfortunately. So hopefully everyone that's in this area has already gotten out. And anyone that still may be there, hopefully you have a spot where you're able to hunker down safely and hope for the best. Over towards Chokolowski. It's quite a name. Chokolowski. We're looking at 6 to 9 feet. And then towards southern Florida, we're looking at scattered. Pockets of 2 to 4, maybe 3 to 5, and a couple of 4 to 6 feet here and there. We go towards Patrick Air Force Base and towards Flagler and Volusia, we're looking at 1 to 3 feet. And then once we start to extend our way towards Jacksonville and towards the Georgia and South Carolina coast, we're looking at isolated pockets of 4 to 6 feet possible, and maybe between 2 and 6 feet as well in other spots. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the tornado threat here. So we have a slight risk issued for the next 3 days. Makes good sense considering the fact that we have a landfalling tropical storm that's going to take its time getting through here. So we'll go over tonight's threat. The main area of interest is going to be essentially just south of Tampa, maybe Melbourne as well, Fort Myers and Miami. Miami's been having tornado warnings issued all day, so this is not surprising. And we do have a small wind threat, no hail threat with this, of course. And we'll go ahead and move to day 2. On day 2, expect this threat to move up further to the north. This time we have Tampa and Orlando in play. Tornado threat It's mainly going to be focused, I think, right around Tampa, I think, or just to the west of it. I'm thinking Melbourne and Orlando, you guys need to watch out, especially since we'll be a little bit closer towards that right front quadrant. I think the threat really will begin in the morning and just kind of linger throughout the day. So tropical tornadoes are very much a thing for you guys. And we'll just kind of go from that point. And then on day 3, of course, I think this is going to be more also another deal where we're looking at a morning threat for potential tornadoes. I mean, we could see something on the left side, but normally the right front quadrant is always going to be the point of interest when it comes to tropical tornadoes, tropical supercells, so to speak. So again, looks like we're going to be dealing with Melbourne and Orlando here. Just to the south of Jacksonville, we're looking at that's going to be the potential focal point for these storms to potentially go tornadic. We'll look at probably while there isn't a day 4 threat issued, I'm going to go on a whim and say over from Charleston, maybe up to Columbia, maybe even Augusta. I'll include you guys in this potentially. You may have a risk for some tropical tornadoes. And this would be for Saturday. Well, these are all the hazards that I can find for right now. So that's pretty much it for this video here. Again, if you happen to be in any of these areas that are either A, in the cone, B, under any sort of severe weather threat over the next few days, storm surge, flooding, take the warning seriously. Stay safe. I hope you've evacuated. If you haven't, then I wish you the best, and that's pretty much all I got for you there. But I'll see if I can do an update video in the morning. Been doing good with them so far. I had to kind of rush the last one, so I apologize if you were hoping for it to be longer. But anyway, this is Tire Metalhead Weather. This has been Tire Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys later.